Shock! Europe has prevented Russia from breathing. An attack that strikes right at the heart of Russia. This changes everything. It brings Moscow to its knees. The US is raising the stakes. And this is a shock for the Kremlin. Russia is facing a crisis that can no longer be hidden. Drones in the sky, panic on the ground. The Russian rear is burning and the economy is bursting at the seams. Europe and America have started something that will change the course of the war. Shocking footage, loud statements, and a fundamental turning point in it. This is the beginning of a new era. All the details right now. Hello, this is Ukraine Today. I'm Solomia Dolik, and these are the latest events. Europe strikes at Russia, and this time the blow will be even more painful. The European Union has finally approved the 19th package of sanctions against the Kremlin. And these measures are aimed right at the very heart of the Russian economy.
This is a good day for Europe and Ukraine.
The new package is not just symbolic. These are real economic blows. For the first time, the EU is introducing large-scale restrictions in the energy and financial sectors, as well as against Russia's so-called shadow fleet.
We are banning the import of Russian liquefied natural gas. This is an important step towards a complete rejection of Russian energy resources.
Meanwhile, pressure is mounting in Washington. US President Donald Trump explained why America decided to tighten sanctions right now.
I just felt that the time was right. I waited a long time. I thought this would happen long before a peace agreement in the Middle East.
Then we're not talking about minor restrictions. The White House is imposing large-scale sanctions against Russian oil and the two largest oil giants of the Russian Federation. These are companies that are at the top of the global energy sector.
These are large-scale restrictions on oil and the two largest Russian oil companies, which are among the biggest in the world.
According to diplomats, the sanctions are already having an effect. It is becoming increasingly difficult for Russia to finance its bloody aggression against Ukraine.
It is getting harder and harder for Russia to fund its illegal war.
But Europe is not stopping. In Brussels, work is already underway on the 20th package of sanctions. And as everyone notes, this is far from the end. This is not the last package. We are already working on the next one. Europe and the US are ramping up the pressure in sync. Russian energy is under attack, its finances are under control, and its diplomacy is restricted. The world is showing Putin the era of impunity is over. And it's not just Europe delivering painful blows to Russia's oil and gas. The fierce revenge of the Ukrainian armed forces, Russia is burning, explosions and chaos in the very heart of Dagestan. Drones are attacking an oil refinery. And this is not a drill, but a new format of war that is rapidly approaching Russia's rear. The fiery geography of explosions in Russia is expanding. Now the flames have engulfed the Ryazan region. There, yet another Rosneft oil refinery is burning. This is one of the largest giants for Ukraine. The flames can be seen from several kilometers away, while official sources are hastily falling silent. 2 strikes, 2 regions, and 1 message. The war is not somewhere far away. It is knocking on the door of Russia's rear, and it is knocking hard. But the fiery wave of attacks continues and is spreading across Russia. And this time under attack are Bryansk and Smolensk regions. In Trubchevsk, drones struck directly at a power substation, plunging the entire city into darkness. And in Smolensk, a thermal power plant is on fire. Local channels report unknown causes of the fire. But before that, there were reports of a drone attack threat. Drones are cutting through the Russian energy system, and every explosion is a signal. The rear is no longer safe. And while Moscow tries to meddle in global affairs and play at big geopolitics, everything inside Russia itself is falling apart. The economy is bursting at the seams, growth rates are at a record low, and even the relevant ministry is no longer hiding it. The country is entering the deepest crisis since the start of the war. What will happen next, and how long can the Russian economy withstand this simultaneous blow? More on this in the video.
A better life. At every opportunity, Putin promises Russians a bright future.
Everyone will be satisfied in this regard. Everyone will get everything they are entitled to.
He continues to insist that the country is developing despite unprecedented sanctions and pressure from the Western world.
Overall, the situation is stable and reliable.
But all of this is just words. The situation in Russia is completely unstable, and with each passing day, the standard of living keeps getting worse. I can hardly add anything here. No. What else is there to add if your policies are leading the country into an abyss? Putin is on the brink of an economic catastrophe. This year, GDP will grow by only 1% and next year by 1.3%. This is the updated forecast from the Ministry of Economic Development. In fact, the government has acknowledged what other experts have been saying. Rapid economic growth is a thing of the past. Ahead lies an extremely slow pace.
The problem for Russia is as follows. It is financing the war. It is financing the war at the expense of the budget. A slowdown in growth means less tax revenue. That's clear. So at the moment, the Russian budget deficit, which is expenses minus income, if your income is less than your expenses, you have a deficit that needs to be covered from somewhere. At the moment, their deficit is 4.5 trillion Russian rubles.
Russia's budget shows significant spending on the military-industrial complex, with about 40% allocated to the war. Moreover, for the first time in history, this sector is consuming more funds than the oil and gas sector generates, experts note.
What is happening now in the Russian Federation is a path toward further economic cooling and a continued decline in growth rates. That is, even if the military-industrial complex is still showing a surplus, but the civilian sectors are showing a significant deficit, a large one. Eventually, this formally balances out to about zero. But it's important to understand that the civilian sectors are a major negative. How do we get out of this situation? People, after all, need to eat, need something to wear. Imports? China to the rescue.
But of course, China does everything in its own interests. The increase in imports from the Middle Kingdom is leading Russia to a market saturated with Chinese goods, especially electronics, auto parts, and consumer products, and even to partial replacement of Western imports. This increases Moscow's economic dependence on Beijing.
So, while China purchases around 60% of all Russian oil, it then uses the money from those transactions to supply the Russian Federation with various goods and products that it has manufactured itself. In other words, Russia sends raw materials to China and receives goods with high added value in return. At the same time, Chinese goods on the Russian domestic market are engaging in something called dumping. Do you know what dumping is? It's when goods are sold practically at cost price. Why is this done? It's done to eliminate the domestic Russian producer.
But that's not all. Starting in 2026, taxes in Russia will rise again. Although the authorities denied such a possibility at the beginning of September, the increase in the tax burden was expected. With falling oil prices and a slowing economy, the state is forced to look for new sources of income to cover military expenses.
In Russia, a hole has formed and it's unclear how to fill it. If you have nothing to cover the hole with, it means you simply won't be able to finance it. Well, of course, you could just turn on the printing press, but that would immediately cause crazy inflation. So what are the Russians doing? Russians have now started actively discussing, and the Ministry of Finance has already submitted bills to the Duma about raising taxes. Raising the value-added tax from 20 to 22%.
President Putin
Will keep fighting until his population starts dying out, to put it bluntly. He doesn't care. And the faster this process deepens, the sooner Russia will come to the negotiating table for peace. And I repeat once again, in this regard, China plays a very significant role. Because today, China is Russia's safety cushion and what allows it to continue waging war.
But of course, Russia is not ready to admit that things are going very badly. For example, Peskov stated that there are certain pressure points in the country's economy. But this is related to sanctions and global economic turmoil.
Yes, this is for the domestic audience, first of all. Peskov actually has a set of messages, and it's quite limited. It's hard to imagine Peskov saying that everything is bad, we're shutting down businesses, packing our bags, and fleeing the country. Imagine Peskov saying something like that. No, everything is fine. He basically just repeats what Putin says.
In reality, Putin's regime is getting weaker every day, and it's also depleting its resources and losing support inside Russia.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
Meanwhile, a new front. The gasoline crisis in Russia is hitting everyday life hard. Entire networks of gas stations have shut down. Only the largest operators are surviving, and even they are barely holding on. Reserves are dwindling, lines are growing, and city after city is feeling the consequences. Ukrainian drones have completely cut off the supply of gasoline to Russian consumers. How are these consequences being felt? More on this in the following report.
Russia, long dubbed a gas station, has suddenly been left without gasoline. What once seemed impossible is now reality. In the regions, gas stations are closing one after another. The display boards show empty lines, while there are queues at the pumps. Independent networks are disappearing and the big ones are holding on, but even there, it's becoming increasingly hard to find regular gasoline or diesel. It'll blow up any second now. Just wait.
About to explode. Reach.
Yes.
They bombed the oil refinery. It was really loud from 4 to 6 without stopping.
There's a fuel crisis in Russia. Strikes by Ukrainian drones have destroyed a significant part of the oil refining system.
Ukraine, which for decades lived off selling oil and fuel, now simply has nothing to fill up a car with. At first, the shortage hit the provinces, but now it has come right up to Moscow itself.
Ukraine struck at plants with a capacity of about 6 to 7 million tons of oil refining per year. And to understand just how painful the blow to the Kirishi oil refinery is, thank you. It is very painful. You have to mentally multiply it by 3. This plant is 3 times more powerful than those that were previously put out of commission. Ukraine.
How did this happen? It's very simple. The authorities decided that gasoline is needed not for the people, but for the war. Billions of dollars are being spent on missiles that fly over Ukrainian cities. Russian oil refineries, in other words, the country's main fuel kitchen, have become a legitimate target for good drones. And they are coming. Tanks are burning, workshops are shutting down, logistics are collapsing. What was once considered a reserve of strength turned out to be just a facade. Repair work, fuel shortages, supply disruptions. All of this is now a reality for ordinary Russians. Delays reach up to a month and a half, and in some places the fuel simply doesn't arrive at all. If before the gas station country supplied half the world, now it can't even refuel its own regions.
It's just the situation at the gas station. And now the loudspeaker announced that the fuel is running out, don't stand in line. Just imagine. That whole line simply won't get any fuel.
And here's the picture. Gasoline has become more expensive, there are kilometer-long lines and growing dependence on a few large companies. Small gas stations are dying out, there's no competition, prices keep rising, and the consumer...
The individual remains a hostage, still being held against their will, unable to regain their freedom or return to their normal life. Despite ongoing efforts to secure their release, they continue to endure captivity, facing uncertainty and distress as negotiations for their safe return persist.
And that's the picture. Gasoline has become more expensive, kilometer-long lines, and growing dependence on a few large companies. Small gas stations are dying out, there's no competition, prices keep going up, and the consumer remains a hostage. While the minister is speaking on air, people are driving from one gas station to another in search of at least a couple of liters.
I didn't even have enough gas to keep waiting in those lines.
All these temporary difficulties are a direct consequence of the war. Russia is spending resources to destroy a neighboring country while it is destroying itself from within. When drones strike factories, it's no longer just a news headline. It's a reality seen by everyone from Siberia to the Volga region and from Kuban to the center of the country. The irony is that for decades the Kremlin blackmailed the world with oil and gas, and now it is facing its own weapon. Fuel has become scarce at home, and this is just the beginning. If the situation doesn't change, Moscow itself risks ending up in the very position it once boasted about, waiting in line at an empty gas station.
Do you have 95? That's how it is, friends. This is already happening today. This is the 4th gas station, an oil highway one, where I tried to fill up with 95-octane gasoline. No, not a single one had it. I hope this is just a temporary glitch.
And how do you feel about these actions? Share your opinion in the comments. Hit the like button under the video and stay tuned for the main news together with me. There's more to come. See you in the next segment.